technical difficulties, although if I look at the clock on the back wall, we're actually 50 minutes early, so that's not bad at all. Welcome to the Town Council public hearing for Wednesday, March 11th. Tonight we'll get a presentation, our first presentation on the operating budget for 26-27. But we will start with the roll call, Madam Clerk.
Peter Talbot.
Here.
Jim Jinks.
Here.
Fiona Pearson.
Here.
Greg Wolf.
Here.
Deb Mankey.
Here.
Lou Tedisco.
Here.
Dave Gulliver.
Here.
Don Walsh.
Here.
And Trish Kramer. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please read the legal notice?
The Town Council of the Town of Cheshire will hold a public hearing at 7 p.m. on Wednesday, March 11, 2026 in the Town Hall Council Chambers, 84 South Main Street, Cheshire, Connecticut, to consider the proposed general fund operating budget for fiscal year 2026 to 2027, the proposed Water Pollution Control Department fund operating budget for fiscal year 2026 to 2027, and the Community Pool Fund operating budget for fiscal year 2026 to 2027, dated at Cheshire, Connecticut, this 11th day of February 2026.
Thank you. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Town Manager Sean Kimball for the presentation on the hearing subject.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. It's wonderful to see a packed house tonight. And apologies again for the brief technical delay there, as my other laptop started to do updates that I did not request. I tonight am presenting the fiscal 27 Town Manager proposed operating budget. A little different than last year and the year before. We will not be presenting the capital budget at this time. Pursuant to Section 7.1 of the Town Charter, the operating budget must be transmitted to the Town Council as it was yesterday by March 10th. The annual capital budget and 5-year capital expenditure plan must be transmitted to the Town Council by July 15th. Over the past few years, we've been putting those together, but this year I decided to stick to just the operating budget as we have a lot to consider, and we'll be coming back to the regular schedule for capital requests going forward. Only the operating budget must be adopted by April 30th, and capital requests must be approved by late August for any referendum items. Otherwise, it's for November 20th. All right, tonight here's just a brief outline of the presentation. I'll walk through a brief budget history. We'll touch on revenues, talk about grand list totals and the Stonebridge development. I'll then be moving to expenditures and major budget drivers, talk about the mill rate and the average taxpayer impact, our general fund balance results, and our community pool and WPCD special revenue funds, and then we'll move on. Just some recent budget history, back to fiscal 21. That was the budget that was developed in March of COVID, 6 years ago. There was no mill rate increase that year. We relied on $2 million of fund equity and cut pandemic-impacted services and froze positions. Following year in fiscal 22, the town utilized $1.4 million of ARPA funds as general fund revenue, appropriated $1.5 million towards the BOE Medical Trust Fund, and also $325,000 of ARPA funds for bulky waste. The following year, mill rate increase was 0.6%, 1.78%. 0.6 mils, 1.78%. We used $500,000 of ARPA funds that year, and also appropriated $1.7 million of fund equity supported by the budget surplus. Fiscal 24, the mill rate increase was 0.77, which was a 2.24% tax increase. Utilized $800,000 of ARPA funds for revenue towards 2 property purchases, included $280,000 for townwide bulky waste collection, and appropriated another $2 million of reserves from the budget surplus. Fiscal 25 was the revaluation year. That's when we had a 7.63 mill rate decrease, but an effective tax increase still of just under 8%, utilizing 1.3% of ARPA funds as general fund revenue, to balance the budget, and also appropriated $2.25 million of fund equity supported by the fiscal 24 budget surplus. And then last year, the year we're in right now, fiscal 26, we had a 2.28 mil increase of 8.3%. Last year, as folks will recall, we lost $2.5 million of state aid and also appropriated $2 million of fund equity. So that brings us to this year. We'll start by reviewing the projected revenues. State aid is on a whole up about 1.3 million in the proposed state budget from the governor. This is across pilot, town aid road, ECS, and excess cost grants. Town departments, the primary revenue change is a $200,000 reduction in expected building department revenues after we budgeted 1.2 million for the current year, expecting activity to slow from the peak we've had this year. Investment income is a major revenue issue this year. This is due primarily to falling interest rates. We have a decrease in investment income of about a little over $2 million. But it's also due to less borrowing projected on the new schools, which is sort of a consequence of having a higher reimbursement rate. We'll be having less borrowing, less cash in the accounts. But also pretty significantly, state reimbursement progress payments have been less timely than anticipated, resulting in less cash and therefore less revenues from investment income. And then finally, this budget continues the use of the $2 million of fund equity supported by the projected fiscal 26 surplus, which I'll get to later. Grand list growth, as announced last month, the increase in our total grand list was $110 million. That's an increase of 2.74%. Real estate values drove this increase at $93 million, or a 2.66% increase. That's the highest real estate increase in 30 years. Business personal property grew by $2 million. Motor vehicle values increased by $15.4 million. While that's all good news and good long-term fiscal news, 83% of the increase from the real estate values, about $77.5 million, is from the Stonebridge Crossing development itself. The reason that's important, as folks may know, there is a credit enhancement agreement because this is located in the TIF district that was adopted by the town council a number of years ago to encourage development in the north end. The credit enhancement agreement requires the town to repay $7 million for public improvements that were pre-funded and prepaid for by the developer on the project. Those include things like the sewer system, the sewer pump station, the public road, and roadway improvements on Route 10. Just to get into some of the numbers, because I know there's a lot of questions around this and kind of when will that $7 million be fully, no longer be an obligation. The value increases on the CEA parcels for this year were $122,906,000 over the base value of $2.4 million. The way the TIF district works, 75% of those taxes are diverted to fund the agreement that I referenced before, the $7 million obligation. And so for context, that equates to about $3 million for fiscal 27. That's 75% of the taxes associated with those properties. So again, the CEA, which funded those public improvements, 25% of the taxes from those properties go directly into the general fund. So you'll see that in our general fund revenues this year. The 75%, again, goes to pay for those obligations. So the logical question is, how much has already been paid? What's going to be proposed to be paid next year? And then when does this obligation be satisfied? So through fiscal 25, about $500,000 is in the current CEA associated account. For the current fiscal year 26, we're estimating another $1 million will be into that account. Again, this is from that 75% portion. I just said before that next year we were projecting $3 million will be going into that account. So that would be a total of $4.5 million through fiscal 27. So for next year's budget deliberations, fiscal 28, the following year, when we're sitting here a year from now, we would still have about 2.5 million remaining on those obligations. And by then, because again, the Stonebridge values will continue to increase from where they were October of 2025, we would estimate the 75% piece of those revenues would be another $3.6 million to be collected in fiscal 28. And so, and just to be clear what that is, that's about 4.8 million in total value, just under $5 million of taxes associated with those that we would have going forward. But you'd see there that we will be collecting more than the 2.5 obligation in fiscal 28, about $1 to $1.1 million that the council can then decide what to do with after that. So I know there's a lot of numbers thrown out there. I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but we've had that question probably pretty consistently as folks want to understand why there's sort of a lag between the growth and the revenues anticipated and experienced with the North End development and when we can have those revenues available to help offset the tax burden in town. So here's just a graph showing our historical grand list. I know the print is small on the bottom. That takes you from year 2000 to year 2025. And you'll see the last 6 years, these are absent reval years. We've had robust grand list growth since 2019. This is a snapshot of our full fiscal 27 revenues. Again, property taxes remain 83% of our total revenue picture, unfortunately. Town departments, grants from the state, and general fund equity making up the other pieces of the pie. So my proposed operating budget that's being presented tonight totals $157,489,000. The major components of that being general government, which is all of the non-education operating expenses of the town. That's an increase of $2.1 million, or a 5.26% increase. As recommended, the education budget presented tonight would be a $6.7 million increase, or 7.22% increase. And debt service would be an increase of $2.6 million, or 22.7%, which I'll touch on in a later slide. Here is our expenditures broken out across all of our various departments, including the Board of Education. The key budget drivers, as I was just referencing, you have the Board of Education budget and the debt service budget being the top two there. These are cumulative in the far right column, totaling up to the 7.87% expenditure increase that's being presented tonight. The Board of Education's budget represents 4.61% of that 7.87. Debt service is another 1.8, and the remaining about 1.46% is the general government budget drivers, of which there's salary and minimum wage increases, medical life insurance increases of about $269,000, new and restored department positions, including a position in the police department, restoring a position in the library that has been the subject of a number of requests over the last few months, and also a position in the finance department. Snow and ice control increases totaling about $104,000, and solid waste disposal increases of $114,000. Starting with the Board of Education budget, the Board of Ed requested budget was $7,024,766. The town manager recommended budget tonight is a reduction of $300,000 from that number. Section 7.1 of the town charter reads, the town manager shall offer recommendations concerning the budget submitted by the Board of Education for the ensuing fiscal year. That's not something I've done often, haven't done that in the last 4 or 5 years. This year, taken into context with the entire revenue picture, the resulting estimated taxpayer impact, as I tried to balance the overall taxpayer impact, I felt it prudent to make this recommendation. It is just a recommendation under the charter, and ultimately the authority over the entire Board of Ed budget at this point does remain with the town council. One of the other factors that, in addition to the overall revenue picture, that I think is worth noting, because this has been a big piece that we've been lobbying for and will be lobbying for with our friends at the Board of Education, is the state really needs to increase its share of the education cost share grant. This hasn't been adjusted in any meaningful way in the last 30 years. In fact, just the last 14 years since fiscal 13, the grant has increased just $63,000, or about 0.68%, while the operating expenses for our Cheshire Public Schools have increased by $37 million at the same time. And this, I think I'm stealing a chart here from my friend Dr. Solon, but this red line at the bottom shows you the state funding that we've had over the last 30 years. And what used to make up a very significant portion of the town's revenues to fund education has remained flat, while all of our other expenses have continued to increase. As I mentioned before, debt service increases of $2.6 million, or 22.7%. Again, this was known and planned for, and it's been talked about by the last 3 budget presentations we've had over the last 3 years. This is almost entirely due to the financing for the 2 new elementary schools. The fiscal 25 adopted budget had an increase of 21% or $1.5 million. Last year's increase was $2.3 million or 25%. And again, this year's is another $2.6 million. You'll see from this slide our ever-increasing debt service obligations. The good news is we're approaching the peak when it comes to the debt service associated with the 2 new elementary schools. Fiscal 27 is the yellow column you see here, just above $5 million. The way we amortize our debt service, that will be a slight increase again next year. It averages about $4.5 million over the following 20 years. And so this, again, back to the slide I had before, if you want to kind of relate this back to the Stonebridge Crossing development, you'll recall that the revenue associated with that, once all of the obligations are satisfied, is about $5 million a year. That's roughly equal to the entire debt service to fund the 2 new elementary schools over that time. So the proposed mill rate that the revenues and expenditures result in here is a 32.4 mils. This represents an increase of 2.66 mils, well, in this chart here, we have the average residential property and also our 2 average vehicles. It results in a tax increase of 8.9%, or for the average taxpayer, $856 for the year. Referenced before, we are relying on $2 million of fund equity as we've done for the last few budgets. A little hard to see this slide, but this is our kind of annual fund balance projection, starting at the top with the available fund balance to start fiscal 26 of $19.5 million, but then we used $2 million last year in the adopted budget. You'll see the results from the current year activity in the middle, estimating a surplus of $2.1 million, mostly from revenue, $1.8 million of revenue. That would result in a projected fund balance of $19.6 million. And again, this budget recommends the use of $2 million. That would keep us above our 10% policy on maintaining our fund balance. It would result in a 12.1% fund balance level. And that equates to about $3 million above our minimum policy for the policy, minimum balance for the policy. Just quickly touching on the community pool and WPCD, the community pool budget is proposed at $1.3 million. This is a slight decrease of about $2,800. Pool fee revenues are projected to reach $875,000 this year, which is the highest year yet. My budget, which we'll be talking about at workshops, recommends a shift in maintenance responsibilities away from the pool to the Public Works Department, as Public Works, public property, maintains all other facilities in town. Also, continued expenditure pressures of an aging facility, including boiler repair and replacements, roof leaks, and pool deck issues do continue. Water pollution control proposed budget is $5.246 million. It's an increase of $992,000. Recommends a $5 sewer fee increase to $495. Estimated fiscal 26 surplus of $880,000 would restore fund equity previously used for ongoing remediation, deferred maintenance. Additional expected surplus for fiscal 27 as budgeted would be $912,000. So the reserves at fiscal year 27 end would be $2.6 million, or about 50% of their operating expenditures. And that concludes the presentation for tonight. I know we have a lot of folks here to speak, and also we have the Board of Ed workshop later. Just want to point out that all of our budget documents are available on our website. They are also available on our new this year ClearGov digital budget book. I encourage folks to take a look at that if you haven't already. It's a new feature we've rolled out this year to try to increase participation, transparency, and engagement with the community. So that's available through our website as well. And then the budget calendar, tonight is the public hearing on March 11th. We resume on March 23rd for recreation, pool, library, human services, and arts place. March 24th, public works, public property, engineering, water pollution control. March 31st, police, animal control, fire, and the civil preparedness budget. That will be over at the police department. On April 13th, finance, insurance, debt service, and general budget deliberations. And then a public information session is planned for April 15th in council chambers and general budget deliberations then. And again, we have another workshop held for April 23rd and a proposed council meeting for adoption on April 28th. All of these, of course, are subject to change as the council continues to review the budget. So I want to thank everybody in the finance department, our town manager's office, who've been assisting over the last month and a half as we've been developing this budget. And look forward to hearing from the public and having any further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. I appreciate it. So we've gone through a lot of slides, a lot of numbers. Understand too that the council has just as of yesterday seen this for the first time. So I'm not sure that we're in a position to answer many questions on it because frankly, we just haven't digested it yet. I encourage you to stay engaged with the budget process throughout the budget process. The list of meetings is on here. The key one to me is the Wednesday, April 15th meeting, where there will be another public information session and an opportunity for the public to speak on the budget after they've seen some of the deliberations. This is about a 6+ week process, which starts tonight, and we hope to wrap it up. We have to wrap it up by charter by the end of April, and that's why there are two proposed dates to vote on a proposed budget, April 28th and April 29th. But tonight is your opportunity to speak on the budget. The podium is to my right. Please state your name, your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes. And we'd love to hear from you.
Good evening, Tom Rocco from 6 North Pond Road. Gee, it's such a nice crowd tonight. I hope I'm not the only one that's going to come to the podium. You know, it seems, okay, good. I hope that I didn't cut in front of anyone, did I? No, all right. Okay, first of all, I want to thank you all for your service to the town. I am a former town councilor, so I know how difficult it can be to go through the budget process, so I appreciate all your hard work. I just went through my tax bills over the last 3 years or so, and taxes, for me at least, even factoring in a revaluation, I've increased by about 20% over the last 3 years, maybe a little bit less than that. And that's a big number. That really is hard to overcome. And I'm looking at a potential 8.5%, 9% budget increase in this budget. So I'm here to say that inflation report came out this afternoon. It was around 2.4% in inflation nationally, and this budget is looking at 9%. I know you have challenges, but I'm encouraging all of you to do the best you can to drive down the cost of this budget, because I know it's tough. I'm a retiree now. I'm living on a fixed income. And I retired at the end of December, and it's really not that easy. I may have to go back to work if you pass this budget the way it is. There's a lot of talk about affordability. I know that there's a lot of debate nationally about this, but the affordability question is really in your hands right now. You know, taxation has a lot to do with how affordable it is to live in Cheshire. And I speak on behalf of a lot of seniors where it does get to be pretty difficult when you don't have an income any longer to rely upon. So I just want to emphasize those points. I haven't seen the budget. I just saw it today. It was posted online, I think, yesterday. I hope to attend a few meetings and provide some additional input. I know you all have constituents. The education budget is a tough one because I know that's really the biggest piece, 63% of our budget. And I know it's hard to cut. There's a lot of heartstrings associated with that. But that is an area where you may have to look at to reduce. And it may be a little premature to say this. One last thing I want to point out. By the way, I want to thank you, Sean, for the information you provided me today regarding the North End development. I appreciate that. It may be a little premature to talk about this now, but the revenue that you realize from the North End development really should be used, if not directly to offset the mill rate, but to pay down debt service. And not to allocate it toward new spending or new programs, but to allocate it directly to debt service, even if it means passing a resolution to that effect, because, you know, you have the revenue to do it. And we're going to have debt service on those schools for the next 20 years. And hopefully we'll be generating revenue for the next 20 years to cover it. So that's my input for tonight. I do want to thank you once again for your service to the town, and thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Rocco, and thank you to you for your service to the community and for the fact that ever since you've been off the council, you continue to show up and continue to be involved in the budget process, and we appreciate it.
Hi, I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Mandy Miller. I'm at 1293 Half Moon Road in Cheshire. And, you know, obviously, I was here last year, you know, when we were faced with a $15 million deficit. And pretty much I'm a bit confounded that just in 10 short months, we're here yet again with a massive budget increase, especially within the Board of Education. So now I completely understand that 80% of that Board of Education budget is contractual salaries and benefits, and understandably, those costs cannot be adjusted. However, there's another 20% of that $20 million of this budget that needs a sharper look at. And, you know, even as one of the Board of Education's own budget members identified 127 line items that increased on that budget by 25%. I often hear members of town seats call for resident opinions on what cuts we suggest. So, you know, if I'm here to state publicly, you know, I would encourage you to start there. You know, bottom line, we need to stop normalizing a 5.37, 5.35, 6.94%, thankfully revised down to 4% last year, and another 7.22% increase in the educational budget. That trajectory is completely, simply unsustainable, and we were looking to be falling off of a cliff. Historically, outside of these outlying past few years, the educational budget every year, the increase has been less than 3%. 3% of a much, much smaller budget now. Then, you know, mind you, and also historically, even when my own kids started in Cheshire, the Cheshire school system, we serviced more students than we are currently. So just 11 short years ago, the student population was more than it is currently, and historically, student enrollment topped 5,200 children that went through the same schools, same halls, at only a fraction of the cost. So the argument that the budget is partially due to the student population growth is really a stretch of the truth, and for teaching positions totaling $400,000 do not equate to $7 million. So I really want to see where we got there. Some of the general public might argue, you know, well, that it's the cost of the new schools. You know, well, no, because we all know that's in the debt service line that we haven't really expanded on. Well, we did, because it's another, you know, huge amount that we're going to be putting on this budget, and it will keep extrapolating over the next 5 years if we actually had the 5-year budget information in front of us. So, you know, but again, that's for another meeting, as I, you know, really came here to particularly for this night for the educational budget. As my other, you know, gentleman here mentioned, I've also heard over and over the argument of inflation and tariffs driving up the costs. However, as a professional in the financial realm, I follow these numbers daily, and the core CPI has been under 3% since August of 2024. This morning's numbers were 2.5 year over year and 2% month over month. So again, the baseless argument for these constant increases in spending caused by inflation or tariffs is more propaganda than fact. So right now I just want to get back to the student growth here, as that will continue to be a factor in future years, from obviously the new enrollment from the residents at Stone Point, River Point projects, and other developments around town. At one point, at one point on the evening of the final Board of Education budget meeting, in which they voted this particular budget in, I found there to be some misleading statements regarding the Stonebridge North End development during a back and forth with Tim White and Superintendent Solon, where he alluded to the North End tax revenue helping to cover this budgetary increase. Now, I'm glad that you actually brought that up on screen, because I know there have been a lot of large numbers that sometimes really don't make sense to laymen. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because yes, we know how to break it down, right? So there was a $93 million grand list growth this year. 83% is from the North End District. 77% of that growth at our current mill rate was roughly $2.3 billion in actual tax revenue. But how much are we actually seeing to offset this new budget? That number is $574,000. We've had 50 kids come through just the North End at we're in conflict of that number, but let's call it $24,000 per pupil. That's $1 million right there. So granted, I'm not saying that the TIF and the North End, that's a great, source of revenue in the future, but it's certainly not going to offset this budget that's before us now. So I just wanted to follow up also on the other slide that came up regarding what our budget and how our tax revenues will increase per household. I gotta tell you, I haven't seen a $425,000 house being sold in Cheshire. That is not the average. That 820, expect everyone to hit 1.5, 2 times that amount on their tax bill this year. That's what we're looking at as taxpayers. And as I was sitting here last year stating and talking about the 5-year projection, I projected if we keep going in this projection, we are gonna hit 50% of our tax increase in 5 years. In 2 years, we're halfway there. So I leave with reiterating, we cannot continue to normalize these increases going forward. It's unsustainable and frankly irresponsible for all of us, and especially for the people that we elected to sit here and work for us as Cheshire's residents. So I would urge you to send this budget back to do more work, as I am certainly, there are many more wants in here than needs. And in the end, I'm only asking you to do what you will inevitably be asking for all of us to do as Cheshire residents, which is do more with less. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller.
Thank you very much. You just go up to the podium? If I do that? You wanna go?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
First of all, I want to thank you for all that you do. I'm going to make this very brief. I'm dependent on tech support in the public library, and a lot of people in my age range are. So you started off with one person, and then you went up to 2 persons. Now there's nobody for tech support. So I'm asking you to consider having tech support in the library, because we're seniors, we weren't raised with this kind of technology. You think you could do that?
Can
Okay.
you, ma'am, would you do me a favor and just state your name and address for the
Yes.
record, please?
My name is, I've been living in Cheshire for many, many years, but I moved into the Southwick of Cheshire. My name is Mindy Daskell. Any questions for me?
No,
Okay.
thank you. We've heard from quite a few people. In fact, I will be reading 2 letters into the record that we received just today, so please. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Well, if you want to go, it's okay. Let's just stand. 'Cause I want to go last.
Hi, I'm Carol Steinberg, 330 Sorghum Mill Drive, members of the Town Council. We have been Cheshire residents, my husband and I, for over 40 years. We've been friends of the Cheshire Library for years. We believe the library is both the hub and the heart of our town. and we are here to urge the town council to return the senior library associate position in the technology department to the new town budget. I was able to use the AV studio, which so beautifully was set up and maintained by Jared. I transferred the sole copy of a tape of my grandparents' 25th anniversary in 1948. It included footage of 3 of my great-grandparents. This was a treasure that I could not have sent to process through the mail. At the AV studio, I converted the oral history audio tape made by my husband's grandmother describing life in Moldova and settling in the US. I was able to make a digital file at the AV studio before the tape disintegrated. Please return the position of Senior Library Associate in the Technology Department to the new budget to allow Cheshire residents to be able to use the AV studio. And we are imploring the Town Council to restore this position in the Technology Department so that library patrons might again receive quick answers that resolve difficult, thorny technical problems. Jared Goldman is an invaluable resource. Please give him the support staff person that he needs to better serve our community. The entire community will benefit from the proper staffing of this position. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Steinberg.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick point, just so folks know, that position as requested is in the recommended budget as presented here. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Maria Ecke, and I'm an ex-librarian that used to work in the Cheshire Public Library with Betty Lawler. I'm all for libraries because they are the key to all knowledge. But I would like to read you some emails which you all received way back on December 18th. And I did not hear from any one of you. And there's another email that was handwritten and given to Noel Shepherd yesterday. I got both the emails. Let me see. December 18th, Mr. Kimball, as you told me in your conversation on December 18th, 2025 at 1:15 p.m., you only called me back today because I called everyone on the town council and told them that you and Chris McCardle, tax assessor, were not doing your jobs properly, in my opinion. You yourself said on that phone call that you didn't leave a message because the phone was answered by a business. I finally ended the call at 1:29 p.m. I do not like being yelled at and questioned, in my opinion. At this time, I believe I'm still entitled to an opinion in this great country of the United States of America. Am I not? I had first called the tax assessor, phone number 203-271-6620, on Monday, December 1st, 2025, to question the large increase in taxes. I called back on Tuesday, December 2nd, 2025, and spoke to a kind lady named Fran, who told me that the assessment was based on sales. Fran also told me how to figure out my tax value at 100%. Later, I talked to Yasmin, who told me I had to call February 2nd, 2025, for the paperwork that I needed. Yasmin was rather abrupt in my opinion, but I didn't question the conversation. Then I called Noel Shepherd, phone number 203-271-6620, and left a message at 10:57 a.m. the same day about the sewer use bill, and explained about calling the phone number that I had been provided, which was answered by a business that was not mine. Then I spoke to an employee named Jordan from the tax collector's office, who kindly told me that there was a freeze on my sewer use bill at $465. That I could ask the assessor about a letter stating that, whereas I would receive a bill stating that the bill was in the amount of $465, and there was a new mill rate by the end of December. I did not want to repeat what had happened to me this summer with the taxes. I had paid an extra amount and waited 3 to 4 weeks to get my overpayment of taxes at $70 approximately back due to a misunderstanding. I simply asked for a couple of pieces of paper to be mailed to my home address so that I could have documentation. There's no need for Mr. Kimball to call me and yell at me about my comment that he's doing the job poorly. That is what I feel he is doing by overtaxing the Cheshire citizens like me and not providing tax relief for elderly disabled citizens. There is not enough open space in town. The tax collector, Chris McArdle, should be taught how to speak and help the elderly. I'm a 73-year-old divorcee with only Social Security coming in to pay my bills. I have worked my entire life, mostly in the state of Connecticut, to only get Social Security. I worked at the Cheshire Public Library a long time ago, and at that time, the town manager kindly wrote me a letter of congratulations on my good grades in library school because he was paying for it. In my opinion, if I hadn't called the town council, I never would have received a phone call back from Mr. Kimball. And I had left many messages for him to return the call. There is no need to be rude or impatient with somebody who ultimately pays your salary. The next email, which was handwritten and given to Noel yesterday, says, "Give me the information concerning the proposed budget, etc. How many people live in town? Exact number, please. How many people lost their jobs at Macy's that lived in town? Exact number, please. How many people that lived in town lost their jobs at the Norton Farm? Exact number, please. The entire budget, including the exact salaries of everyone and the range of salaries. How many living units at Stonebridge Commons are occupied and how many are sold? How many business units are there in Stonebridge Commons? How many are occupied?" And I do agree with the gentleman that spoke concerning Stonebridge and taxes going up. I'm an elderly 73-year-old divorcee, and I don't have a pension from anybody. All I have is Social Security. And I don't believe I should have gotten that kind of treatment at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zecchi.
I wish you had said all your names a little bit louder, because I would have liked to have written down a roster, because I emailed all of you on December 18th, and I called all of you, and nobody called me back or wrote back to me. I'm ashamed. I've got Deborah Mankey, Democrat. I've got phone numbers. Fiona Pearson, Democrat. I think politics are playing a part in this, and there should be no part of politics in a budget.
Thank you, Ms. Zecchi.
All right, I got everybody's name, but I don't know who's who. And who's Peter Talbot, may I ask? You are. Okay, you are gonna get the next email. And
Thank you
You
for
know,
your comments. I appreciate
see,
it.
here's, by the way, here's a little newspaper article, which you might be interested in. Whereas our governor is basically.
Ms. Zecchi, I'm going to have to ask that you wrap it up.
Okay,
Thank you.
you might want to read it. Oops.
Anyone else to speak on the hearing topic? Seeing none, I'll close this public hearing. We move now to the special town council budget meeting of Wednesday, March 11th. And I will turn the gavel, so to speak, over to our budget chair, Fiona Pearson. Yes, Ms. Mankey.
I am recusing myself from the rest of this meeting.
Ms. Mankey will be recusing herself from the discussion this evening. Ms. Pearson, all yours.
All right. Welcome all to the budget workshop for the Board of Education, and I'm going to turn this on over to Superintendent Jeff Solon.
Sure, Tom.
I'm wondering how many people lost their jobs there. Why wasn't it turned into a town farm?
Would you like me to wait for Ms. Menke? Are you okay? Or? No. Oh, recuse yourself. Right?
I'm sorry, yeah, she has recused herself, so
All right. Thank you very much.
all yours.
Good evening, everybody. Again, I'm Jeff Solon, the Superintendent of the Cheshire Public Schools, and I'm here this evening on behalf of, obviously, our school system and our Board of Education to present the 26-27 Board of Education approved budget. I guess I'll just start by a quick overview of the state of our schools currently. We're excited about the new construction at both of our new buildings. This is the new Norton School, which will be open in the fall of '26. You can see the construction is moving along really quickly. As Sean mentioned, you know, we had a nice reimbursement rate through the legislation, and we're on schedule and doing well from a financial perspective. So that's Norton. And then from our construction budget perspective, and this is our new Barnum School at the north end of town. You can see Colonel Barnum there pictured on the day that we were naming the school. It's a picture on the left of our library, and then just a exterior picture. Of course, as Sean mentioned, the community certainly supported these projects, and I know we've been planning for their construction for years. The overview of our performance as a school system is nothing short of exceptional. Of the 165 school systems in Connecticut, we ranked 8th on the District Performance Index. That's a collection of about 20 plus measures, everything from chronic absenteeism to achievement by high needs students, our career readiness classes. It's really a wide range of metrics that make up this one district performance index, which is why I really appreciate this being the best overall global picture of a school system. And again, we finished 8th on that. You can see on the side there's some information about per pupil expenditure that I will dive into a little bit later. You'll see here, though, a lot of the school systems on this list are representative of Fairfield County, and I cite that, the average in this list and the list of the top 20 per pupil expenditure is $24,492. Obviously we would have to spend about $4,000 more to reach that average, or $15 million. And this is the average here. The per pupil expenditure is taken from 24-25 data. That's the most recent data available. And again, I know a lot of these districts are in Fairfield County, but even taking a 25% discount on that, it's $11.6 million. So wanted to highlight our growth over time. This is our district performance index state rank over time, going from 23 back in 2016 to 8 in the last 2 years. Not that I pay attention, but we're 700th of a point away from 7th. So maybe next year. We're also, particularly proud of our unified sports program in the Cheshire Public Schools. Among other things, multiple schools are national blue ribbon schools. We're consistently recognized as a top community for music in America. 93% plus of our students participate in extracurricular activities. We annually are recognized with the CIAC Michaels Cup. That's through the Connecticut Interscholastic Athletic Conference for sportsmanship, winning, and character demonstrated in the course of competition. Again, a national unified champion school at Cheshire High School. We're also a national unified champion school at Highland Elementary School through the Special Olympics of Connecticut. Recognized for the top Best Buddies program in the USA and in Connecticut last year. And accredited preschool program, and many of our students, almost all of them, take 2 or more courses in AP, dual enrollment, career technical ed, or workplace experience. So, what we provide in our budget is certainly what you would anticipate, the classroom instructional experience, but we also provide mental health support, nutrition, medical care, all sorts of specialized services to meet diverse learners and their needs, as well as so many of those diverse after-school opportunities for the students in our community, and of course, transportation as well. So the Board of Education for budget for the current year, 25-26, was 93,124, 314. The recommendation that I had made before the board in early January was $101,350,757. There was a lot of deliberation throughout the month of January, and a lot of difficult decisions went into that, ultimately reducing my proposed budget by $1.2 million in that process. So the final board-adopted budget was $100,149,080 for a 7.54% increase. So the budget environment, there are certainly Cheshire factors, there are Cheshire Public School factors, there are state and national factors here that, you know, are at play. You know, among the external factors, you know, the minimum wage has increased 69.4% in the last 7 years. Many of our non-certified staff have pay scales that are kind of grounded in that. So folks like our playground lunch aides, paraeducators may not be paid that. They're probably paid, but more than that is a starting rate. But we've had to adjust that up over the years as the minimum wage has increased. The state revenue, as Sean mentioned, it's called the Educational Cost Sharing Grant. You may be familiar with a lot of news recently about the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities has really lobbied the legislature hard on this one, that, you know, the state in our Constitution, our state Constitution, is responsible for education. And you can see it's basically been flatlined since that graph on the left starts in 1987. So it goes quite a ways back where there hasn't been any real change in our funding over that time. And as Sean mentioned, it was 33% of our budget at that point. It's about 10% of our budget now. And so that is something that I think all of us in Cheshire, but beyond, are paying close attention to in this legislative session. And of course, you know, we are, according to the World Population Review here, the fastest growing community in Connecticut, 4.33% over a year. That's the entire community. I'll get to student population momentarily here. Our contractual wage and medical benefit cost increases. The teacher contract this year is a 2.9% general wage increase and a 1.56% step increase. So the overall increase was 4.46. Non-certified salaries, that includes a building maintainer that was added in the budget, a tradesperson, with the addition of quite a bit of mechanicals in the 2 new schools, and as well as our paraeducators and our other non-certified staff. Medical benefits, 6.92. I never thought that would be the bright side. It's not 11% as it was last year. And then, you know, we factored carrying costs for both Chapman and Darcy in this budget to maintain everything from July 1 until December 31, when the buildings would then be turned over to the town. And that's approximately $100,000. And then last year, to try and mitigate the significant reductions that we made in the budget last year, we carried over $250,000 from the budget the year prior to try and retain positions and cover as much of the budget as we could. Unfortunately, this year, as I'm sure you guys are experiencing, the snow budget is killing us significantly beyond what, you know, we had projected, or I think anybody projected. But I know that we won't have $250,000 to carry over. So our projected enrollment as a school system, and I think this is, you know, really interesting in that at the end of last school year, in June of 2025, our total enrollment was 4,257 students, and you can see how it's broken out across the grade spans. In the middle of this year, it was 4,372 students, and projection for next year is 4,482 students. So we'll increase by 225 students from the end of last year to the start of next year. That's a pretty significant jump for us, and we added 0 classroom teachers last year. And as we have moved into this current budget, the addition of new staff is a significant driver. When I cite the high school population, I just want to note that that includes our 18 to 22-year-old population. We historically had been responsible for providing transition services for students that have significant needs until the age of 21, and then recently the state adjusted that to the age of 22. There's no additional funding we received from the state when that adjustment was made. So our projected enrollment growth, and this comes from the SLAM report that was done in the March of 2022, gave us the different scenarios, a high projection, a low projection, and we're splitting the difference really between those two projections here. So you can see that we are growing as anticipated. You know, we kind of bottomed out around 2020 there. Questions, I know we have questions about the multifamily housing units around town. This chart shows the various housing units, how many of those units exist at each location, and then how many students we have out of each location. So 831 units possible and 91 students to date. So this was as of the end of last month, this data. So, you know, if we're growing 225 students, 91 of them from these multifamily homes, there is also a lot of population growth from housing turnover and birth rate and from new homes. Again, you may have heard Sean and I say this before, but flat funding over 40 years. So our budget, as constructed, does not make advancements. There's, you know, we're not adding services in this budget. There is a restoration of $85,000 in the instructional supply to provide instructional resources to students. But really, this budget is about maintaining our current services. And I'll get into like the class size ratios and stuff momentarily. The cost of special education has risen significantly. I'll talk about that as well. I know those of you that have served on the council many years, you know the games that we've all tried to play in years past around medical benefits claims. I'll talk a little bit about that. We had to purchase a van that had to replace a van that we use. Contracting transportation services is astronomically expensive. So where possible, we've found it to be much better for us economically to actually buy the van and drive ourselves. Actually, we have a teacher who got his certification to be able to drive students. So we do that because it's certainly much more cost effective when we have to do internal transportation. If it's out of town transportation for outplacements, what we'll do is we engage in a network around our community of other school systems who might be transporting students to places to try and ride share as part of our efforts to reduce cost. So our elementary staffing, I'm sure you know a lot of people around town are familiar with the fact that we're redistricting. If there are questions about where any home falls in our redistricting map, if you go to our homepage, you can select the redistricting map. It's an interactive map on the upper right-hand corner. Type in your address and it'll show you what zone that you live in. We also are permitting people to request to attend a school outside the zone that they live in. So if you've gone to, you know, Chapman for 5 years and you're redistricted to Highland and you want to go to Barnum for 5th and 6th grade or something, then you can do that if you provide your own transportation. So there are a number of students who have elected to redistrict, and when we pull everything together, these are the staffing ratio, the staffing numbers, and then the student to teacher ratio across the district. These are the the 4 elementary schools that we have now. The Barnum, as you can see, does not include our pre-K program that's there. It's more than 100 students in that program that participate in a variety of special education and preschool programming. The non-special education preschool programming is basically paid for by the state of Connecticut through something called the Smart Start Grant. So the net certified changes across the district, we increased 10 students at Barnum. The school is much larger than Chapman. We decreased 10 students from Highland. The goal was to redistrict, and we currently have 950 students at Highland. It's larger than a lot of high schools in Connecticut. So we've balanced and worked that out. We've reduced 2 positions at Doolittle School as well. We have added 8 positions to Norton, and we've eliminated a program that we used to offer called Transition K. When the state changed their kindergarten start age, you used to be able to start kindergarten if you turned 5 before January 1st. Now it's September 1st, and in that transition period, we offered a pay-for-service Transition K program. We've since eliminated that, and we'll fold those teachers back into this so that we're not hiring additional teachers. We've needed to add, given the growth that we've had, a halftime art, music, and PE positions to cover those specials. It's cheaper than paying our existing staff like overtime to teach extra classes. We've had a significant increase in our multi-language learner population, so we're adding a half-time position in that role from 95 students to 174 students. These are students who can speak a real diversity of languages and very little, if any, English when they arrive in our schools. So this teacher provides support to the teachers who are teaching those students on how to help them acquire English and learn at the grade level standard that everybody else is. We also added a half team at Dodd Middle School in 8th grade. The class size has risen to nearly 26 students per class. This brings the class size average in 8th grade to 22.9. So again, these, all these combined net out to 8 additional positions. That's the equivalent of $680,000 on a budget line. You can see the historical class size trend data. The red is 7th grade, green is 8th grade, and blue is elementary school. The 26-27 projections include the addition of staff. So you can see that the 18.8 kind of is where we've been on average. 19 is the highest we've been in a decade. So we're floating around that point as we try and be very, economically sensitive. The district reference group is a designation that the State Department of Ed created many years ago and hasn't updated since. A few years back, the Connecticut School Finance Project ran all the same data about like town wealth and incomes and taxable property and everything, and created updated district reference groups. So what you see on the map here is considered Durg B, communities you would consider to be a lot like the Cheshire community. So that is really our peer reference group. And so I've broken out a few charts to kind of show you where our staffing stands. Years ago, I was asked, about Cheshire High School. We did cut 2 positions this year at Cheshire High School, 25, 26. And so you see there, our ratio is kind of in the middle of the district reference group. Next year, again, our enrollment is projected to grow by 80 students there. So I think, we're in a solid position there. District-wide, our student per teacher average, we're at near the bottom of the DIRG, third from the bottom in terms of most students per teacher across the district. Students per building administrator, I'd say bottom third, I guess just eyeballing that without counting it out. Central office, students per central office administrator, we're dead last in the DIRG. I didn't calculate the state, but I know we were like second to last or last at one point in the state of Connecticut. So what have we done to try and mitigate the financial impact of our growth and some of the other things that we have going on? This current year that we're in, we reduced 5 paraeducators, a library media clerk, 2 high school teachers, and an elementary Spanish teacher, which eliminated the elementary Spanish program. For next year's budget, we've reduced a transportation scheduler, 3 secretarial positions, a nurse, and 5 paraeducators. I know it's a priority of the board and ours administratively to make reductions as far away from the classroom as we can, and we try and load all of our resources to the student-facing population. I mean, that's why our central office administrator ratio is the lowest in the DIRG. We push all the resources to classroom level. Our medical benefits, I mentioned earlier, we try and have a target of 2 months reserves. Our reserves are currently at 1.75% months claims. So our budget is configured next year, is designed only to meet the contribution is only the expected claims rate. There's no trying to recoup to get to 2 months or anything like that. It's just flat at the expected claim rate. And I feel compelled to explain it because I know we've had a lot of conversation about that. I know the town's working on that as well. So our recommended budget, where are the dollars being spent really? And 80% is in our staff. It's salaries and benefits to our people who work in the Cheshire Public Schools. 9% includes transportation. And that's a significant portion of the budget. The 6% for instructional expense, that also includes tuition outplacement, and that is a number, like I said, for everybody across Connecticut that's grown pretty substantially. Our 5% maintenance and operation also includes all of our utility bills. So by category, where are the increases coming from? 65% in salary and benefits. That purple 15% kind of jumps out. Again, a lot of that's tuition outplacement, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So this is really an overview of our different budget lines. More than 95% of these are, contractual or mandated facilities overhead, and then there's 4.8% roughly that's discretionary in the approved budget. So, as much as I don't know that I consider insurance discretionary, but areas that we have a bit more control over. You know, obviously, we need to have a telephone and online services to do business, but, you know, these are not the same contracted items that you see in that upper 95%. So I talked about tuition outplacement being a major budget driver. We're at about 2.8 million now, going over 3.5 million next year. That's a very significant jump. It's based on two things. I mean, we actually are leaders in the DERG in terms of keeping students in-house and providing services in-house. But when needs get to a point that they exceed our ability to support them, or we go to a hearing and an arbitrator decides that, you know, we need to outplace a student or something like that, they become outplaced. The costs of those services I mentioned and the transportation is skyrocketed. There's been legislation to create committees to evaluate caps on outplacement providers. You know, our argument, and I think, you know, Sean, his argument as a municipality is that we need to come at this from two places. We need to increase reimbursement to communities. There's already a formula set up for that. It's called excess cost reimbursement. Anytime a school system pays more than 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure, that money theoretically is supposed to be reimbursed from the state to the municipality. However, the state designed it as a block grant. So the pie is only so big. And so we get a fraction of that pie based on our wealth factors, and we, you know, as a result, see much less than we would otherwise be entitled to. But that's a major budget driver. It's gone up pretty exponentially. Medical benefits, this is why the town is looking at medical benefits on both sides of the street. And we have worked diligently with different insurance providers, but this is an American problem post-COVID. You can see the rates just took off, literally doubling over the course of the last 6 years. So when this happens, we have to make sacrifices in other places, because, you know, that $8 million over the last 6 years has to come from someplace. So this is our instructional expense line relative to our overall budget. So you can see our total budget there in, let's call it purple, magenta, I don't know what that is, but it's flat basically along the bottom. We haven't increased that line much in the course of 20 years. So as a point to that, on just the instructional supply line, the budget was $565,000 back in 2010. When you adjust that for inflation, one might anticipate it being $785,000. Today, it's actually $541,000, which certainly takes away from our buying power. But again, you know, we're trying to cover the cost of tuition outplacement and insurance and other costs, increasing utilities. So maintenance and operation, this also includes utilities, mind you. And I think we recognize the, you know, increase in utility costs over time. In essence, we've been flatlined, so we forego a lot of maintenance to cover the electricity bill or heat. And so that's what you see playing out in our efforts to try and reduce the overall financial impact. So again, the DERG-B, for sake of comparison, we've talked a little bit about per pupil expenditure, and I think there's a little confusion about basically what that is and how it's factored. And it's basically expenditures from all sources, with the exception of reimbursable regular ed transportation. For example, we bus to St. Bridget's because we're required to by law. And so there's a reimbursement rate on that. That's not included in our expenditures. Capital debt service, none of that is included. It's strictly the operating budget, and it's provided from the educational financial system. So everybody is required by law to pump information into this. It all goes up apples to apples. Average daily membership, how many kids on average over the course of your school year attended your school system? Per pupil expenditure is how much did you spend by how many kids did you have? It's pretty straightforward and apples to apples. So when we look at the state average, $24,251 was the state average. Cheshire's per pupil expenditure was $20,816 last year. So about $3,500 less than the state average. And you can see in that right-hand column since 2018 how that delta has grown. And I'm not ever going to tell you that your achievement is, strictly related to how much money you spent. Clearly, we have taken off academically and done exceptionally well because of the work of our teachers, our students, our administrative team. But, the gap has grown, and we rank 121st out of 165 Connecticut districts. If you want to see what that list is, you can go just type in net current expenditures per pupil in Connecticut, and it'll take you right to the page that has all that information. Our budget to just meet the average would have had to increase by 15.5 million, or 14.5 million, excuse me. If we look at just that DIRG B group that I showed you, it would have to increase by 8.2 million. Since 24 through 24, inflation rose 15% over that time in Connecticut. The average Connecticut district budget's up 12.1%, Cheshire's up 8.5%. So, again, I think, here's another visual to illustrate how we are delivering an incredible return on the investment relative to, I'll put us up against anybody in Connecticut. This graph, or scatter plot, excuse me, shows the horizontal green line is the district performance index of 75. That's the state target. So you want to be above that green line. As you know, there are only 7 districts who have a higher performance rate than we are. The vertical green line is the average per pupil expenditure of 24,000 and change. So everybody to the left of that spends less than that. So, good argument could be made that we're doing it better than anybody else in terms of our achievement relative to our expenditures. But I did get questions about, the per pupil spending, and so I wanted to look at it a different way. So I turned to ANGLIC as the way they refer to it, the adjusted equalized net grand list. And that is something that the state uses to rank town wealth. Greenwich is number 1 in Connecticut. Cheshire's 61 on that list. So I took a regression between per pupil expenditure and the adjusted net grand list growth. And when you do that, our predicted per pupil expenditure is $25,641. That's a $20 million difference in our budget. Again, I'm not suggesting our budget needs to increase by $20 million, not to be competitive or for any other reason. But I think, it is exceptionally lean, and we get tremendous results for the investment that's made. The DIRG B adopted budgets for this current school year, Cheshire is identified in red. We had a 4% budget this year. Our 26-27 budget compared to other district reference group B school systems, 12 of the districts had 5% or higher requested from the superintendent. The numbers are different between the superintendent and the Board of Ed adopted columns because not every board has adopted a budget yet. They're in different places in their town charters. But so far, 6 of those 8 have a budget over 6%. 2 of them at 5 to 6, and you can see the list. What's interesting is only South Windsor has enrollment growth the way that we do. Over the last 3 years, South Windsor has added 7 more students than Cheshire has. They're seeing significant growth. Their adopted increase was 8.16%. So our revenue, I really don't want to beat this horse much more about the educational cost sharing, but you can see the outline of the cost sharing. If you look at Sean's budget book, the numbers are pretty much the same with the exception in 2 places that Birth to 3 and Smart Start, integrated pre-K, those numbers are not identified as revenue in Sean's budget because the town collects that money and then gives it back to us to pay the teachers who run that. So that is revenue that's not coming necessarily from the state per se, but often parents pay on a sliding scale as part of the state program, and we deliver that service to our community at basically a net zero cost, but it has tremendous academic and community benefits for our families, especially students that have more significant needs. I know there are questions about the Department of Ed budget and the federal budget. So the Department of Ed budget, the state budget is obviously being hashed out as we speak, but the federal budget is determined by Congress and is static for next year. Like the money from the federal government that we get is protected money. So we're okay there. Just want to remind people that investment in our school system is indeed an investment in our whole community. And that's done through a lot of different ways: operating budget, capital budget, school modernization. I do want to touch really quickly on the school modernization piece and working with our legislative delegation and with the council and others. We have worked to pass, God bless you, to engage a energy performance contract. And in that energy performance contract, we are doing significant work with about $6.5 million in state grants to bring down our energy consumption costs. That includes solar at the north end, a revamp of the HVAC system. Actually, there is no air conditioning at Doolittle School. It's the only school without it, but we're making energy upgrades to make it much more efficient so that really we can add air conditioning and maybe even drop the cost of our energy consumption at Doolittle. So we are making significant improvements to reduce our energy costs and have a better footprint. But I think, just to wrap up on that real quick, as much as we're working as fast as we can, we had substantial delays through the state, and we're hopeful that we can get some of this work done over this summer. If not, we're planning how do we scale it through next year and at worst next summer. So again, investing in the school system is an investment in the community and home values and desirability. The DIRG B spending, I talked about what the average is. This slide just gives you a more direct view of every school system within the DIRG and their spending. And unfortunately, there's a lot of pressure, being applied to us as a community, and I appreciate that. The growing enrollment, increased student needs, the cost increases, the flat funding could be another arrow on here, and I think we're all trying to navigate that together. And at the same time, maintain what we provide for our community to the greatest extent we can. And that's, I guess, where I'm kind of concerned about maintaining what we're currently providing for the community. Obviously, we've had significant enrollment growth, which is a blessing and a challenge at the same time. I think this is a desirable place to live in Cheshire. Our achievement obviously continues to climb, and we've done exceptionally well. Our teachers, students, families, and administration, again, deserve a lot of credit for working in partnership for that success. We, as you can see, certainly relative to our peers, leverage our resources incredibly well. And I think that's our data shows that. I think this next piece is telling in that if the council adopted the Board of Education proposed budget as it is with our current enrollment projection, our per pupil spending would not even be as high as the state average from 3 years ago. So I think, it reflects where we are in terms of our efficiency, and, what we do, the responsibility we have for our money. So getting here today, over this year and next year, our budget cuts 3 teachers, 10 paraeducators, 3 secretaries, a library clerk, a nurse, and a transportation scheduler, and we grow by 225 students. So we are making significant efforts. The board has made significant efforts. They've already reduced the budget by $1.2 million to get to this place, and had to make really difficult decisions. I know this is a question that comes up through a lot of our veteran board members, the retirement savings, and I think I've shared in years past. When I first became superintendent 10 years ago, and there was a more significant pool of teachers coming out of higher ed, when teachers retired at top step and we could hire teachers at bottom step, we would anticipate a net savings there on those positions, and we've budgeted those in. In order to work with the board to get to this reduction that we were, the 1.2, we've already factored 3 retirements in this year. I only have 1 at this point, 1 confirmed retirement. So that's already been factored into this budget as we tried to get down as low as we possibly could. And I think my final takeaway here is that we've presented a mountain of evidence about how lean we are operationally, and the return on that investment. I would welcome anybody, Mandy, anybody who wants to have a conversation with me about, where we are financially in our spending. I'm more than happy to sit down and talk to you about it. We're open to, what we can do to make our organization as lean and as effective as possible. But I'm telling you right now, we've cut the low-hanging fruit. We've cut some of the low-hanging limbs. And, if we cut another $300,000, we're not going to look like what we look like now in terms of the services we provide. People have said, middle school sports, stuff like that. Middle school sports is a $85,000 proposition. That's not going to do it. A $300,000 reduction from where we are right now. We'd have to cut a significant number of teachers and or other programs to get down another $300,000. And I'm not trying to be alarmist in the least. I'm, just showing you where our spending is. And there's a reason that our spending looks like it does relative to our peers, because we're really sensitive about what we do, and don't have waste, and the resources are directed in front of the students. So when we make reductions, the resources have to come away from in front of the students, and that's, it's a lot for us to think about, and I know it's difficult as a community. I certainly appreciate that there's very difficult decisions, that have to be made through this process. I just want to walk, I know there's some new folks on the council, I just want to walk you very quickly through this budget book. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but it is ultra comprehensive, and I say that too, knowing that if you're at home and you go to the Cheshire Public Schools website, select Board of Education budget, there is a PDF of every single page in here. It could not be more comprehensive. history back 20-plus years on line items of what we spend. It is incredibly thorough, and it reflects when we get questions, and every once in a great while, we get a question that the data was not available in our budget book. We incorporate it in subsequent years. So you'll see a lot here going through our enrollment, including our enrollment history, going way back. So when there are questions about, how many kids were in the district a decade ago, I've worked in the Cheshire Public Schools for 21 years. When I started here, we had 5,500 kids. We got down to about 4,000 right around COVID, and now we've rebounded to 4,500 with in continued trajectory. So yeah, when our numbers were going from 5,500 students to 4,000, we cut people. We brought costs down. That's why the budget was 3%. And now, we're in different economic conditions. Certainly, like I said, outplacements and benefits, but our enrollment is rebounding up. And then, unfortunately, it's reflected in our finances. So you can go through the employee benefits, everything. I guess there's a narrative. So if you ever said, like, geez, this line item went up 14%, why is that? You can look at the line item in the budget book, and it gives you a description and a narrative about it. It tells you what is incorporated here and why it may have moved. So there's a lot of time put into this because I know that, a 7.5% budget increase is substantial. I've been superintendent a decade. We don't make 7.5% budget increases and requests like that. And so there's a lot of backdrop to all that. I would encourage you to, if you can't find it in here, ask me. Happy to help you anytime. Happy to sit down with you or anybody else in the community to explain what and why we're doing what we're doing. But there is an awful lot of information in here, and I don't want to take a lot of hard work that was done by Emily Taylor and Heather Santee and Marlene Solano and our administrators and a touch of Vin Massiana in here as well. Throw him a bone. He's still he doesn't need any bones tossed, but there's still his work in here too. So I would encourage you to check it out. And again, I'll just close that we are who we are because of the incredible work of our talented staff, the incredible community support we get from you and our families and our businesses that help us so much, and of course our great students as well. So I thank you very much for the opportunity to walk through this all tonight, and certainly we'll be here for questions tonight or any night you need me to be here to answer questions.
Thank you, Superintendent Solon. Very thorough, very comprehensive presentation. So I open the floor to my fellow counselors who have questions.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you all for being here and listening to this comprehensive and thorough presentation. So I turn it over to my fellow counselors now for questions. Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Dr. Solon, for that.
Sure.
One place to cut. Make this electronic like the town did. It would make things a lot easier. I hate these.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate the time you took, and Emily and whatever bone Vin threw in there. I appreciate it. The couple questions. I'm still diving into this, but you mentioned about the flat line from the state funding. Is that basically towns like Cheshire? Like, are they flatlining every city and town in the state? Like
so it's most everybody.
Okay.
There are a handful of communities that have received more funding more recently based on need. So the educational cost share has what's called a foundation. That foundation is about $11,000. After you look at that $11,000, there's a number of factors they consider, wealth being primary. And so they make adjustments to that $11,000 per student mind you. After they make adjustments, then they divvy out the money. To give you an idea of how out of whack things are, there are only 2 school systems in Connecticut who do receive the $11,000 per pupil. Only 2. So it doesn't sound like it's a formula designed to provide educational funding for everybody in Connecticut if only 2 districts can access it. That's New Britain and Hartford. Even Bridgeport doesn't get $11,000 per student. So ours is about $2,000 per student.
Okay. The other thing is, it's a big increase, you said, in the special ed part of it. How, the costs that we spend on special ed compared to the DIRG, for instance?
Sure.
Where do we fall in terms of that? And I didn't like hearing, like, when we get to 4.5 times what the average, so you're talking like it could be $80,000-$90,000.
Correct.
Per student, that the state is supposed to give some money towards, but they don't.
Yeah. So you're right. Our per pupil expenditure is $20,816. This the most recent data. So if we spend for a student 4.5 times that, 90,000 in round numbers, anything beyond that, theoretically, the state is supposed to reimburse the district for. But they only set aside, let's say, hypothetically, $100 million for that. But statewide, they get, 500 million in requests. So they're only doling out, and those numbers, by the way, are arbitrary and hypothetical. But I don't know what the actual state number is or anything. But they only dole out 100 million. And then they use a very similar formula to the one I was just describing for ECS. So we get really a fractional amount of what we should technically be entitled to. In a lot of communities, CCM has been very vocal in this respect too. There's something to it when CCM, who represents everybody, big, little, red, blue, every walk, is saying there's a problem here. So ECS and excess costs are things, but I'll get you data on, and we'll put on our website, data about Cheshire's special ed spending compared to peers. Happy to do that.
Yeah, no, just curious. And finally, a $7 million increase in maintenance and utilities, and I was thinking, we're opening 2 brand-new schools that are energy efficient and state-of-the-art, and we're not gonna need much maintenance on those to start with. So how is the 7 million, the majority of it going towards utilities? Is it the electric issue, or?
Total increase, because we increased 476 in our maintenance and operations.
Yeah, well, there was a $7 million, I think,
On the pie chart, Don?
yeah, that was maintenance and utilities, included utilities.
Yeah, I'll pull that up so people can see what we're talking about here, and I can make sure that you're talking about.
Oh, it's
this-
7%. Okay, it's a 7% increase.
Yeah, so, so 7% of our overall budget increase. I think 100,000 of that is carrying costs.
Okay.
On our existing schools.
What's
so
the date that turns over?
January 1.
Okay, so they're carrying them through the end of the year.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if there are other major drivers on that line that are noteworthy, but yeah, it is our utility costs and everything else, which are obviously going up. That's why, for us, our 2 new buildings are geothermal.
Mm-hmm.
And when we add solar, there really, there may be a circumstance where we're selling power back to the grid on those 2 buildings, which would be amazing.
Well, like last year, though, that 7% or 476, last year, was it more?
I'd have to look at
That's all
last
right.
year's.
I'm
ones,
just
sorry.
curious. Don't worry about it. It's
Yeah,
just- just
I don't
curious.
know what percentage of our increase was
that's
attributable
fine.
to that last year.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure.
That's all I have for today.
If I can just jump in to tag on to that, and I did jump into my book, Dr. Solon, so I was walking through it if you go to the operations and maintenance tab, on page 1 is the real driver. It's public utilities. You asked if it was utilities. The changes there is 345,267, which is an increase of 26.76%. So I think you were on the right target when you said utilities.
Kind of surprised it would go up that much.
Oh, please.
So I will say there are energy efficiencies with the new building, but they are fully electric and climate controlled, where you're not seeing that at Chapman and Darcy, so that contributes to the increase. We're also increasing 72,000 square feet in space, so.
But we're dropping free schools activity.
We are, but the overall square footage is increasing by 72,000.
Again, that's why those solar panels became mission critical for us. I'm glad that we were able to incorporate those to really offset the cost.
Councilor Jenks.
Thank you. First night of budget season, so I don't have really super pointed questions at the moment. I just, first of all, wanted to say thank you to all the administrators and teachers that are here. And it's always great to hear what a tremendous job the schools are doing and what the achievement level is for the, and the value that we get, obviously. I think we do a lot of that pretty well on the town side too. We get a lot out of the town staff and out of our services on the town side. But you're probably seeing a lot of long faces up here, and I don't want that to be necessarily an impression of how we feel about you guys. It's how we feel about the beginning of the budget season. So just to let you know. You mentioned a lot of deliberations happened after you presented your budget. Can you give us an idea of kind of the areas that you guys spent the most time on?
Yeah, I think the class, the staffing was a big deal, where we're allocating our staff and how many staff to allocate. We spent a lot of time on that, and we actually, we went through every line, deliberating everything that we had. We had looked at, is it worth putting another administrator at Barnum? We nixed that idea. We spent actually probably the most time trying to figure out where the reductions were going to come from. We knew that we had to get that down, and like you guys, when you deliberate, and that takes a lot of time because they're tough decisions about where money should come from, and for us it meant plenty of jobs too. So
Right.
That's really where those cuts were going to come. Where can we save money consolidating our buildings? Where else could we save money?
Okay.
Throughout the process.
And then, so obviously you guys, like I said, you're getting a lot of, the performance is excellent. The students are doing well. And the amount that we spend obviously is lower than most other districts. And so I always kind of wonder how you accomplish that. And I know it's not, it's the students, the teachers, the parents, everyone kind of comes together to make that happen.
Sure.
But where's the weakness? Like if this sort of starts to break down somewhere, can you answer where are we going to start to see that? Because it seems like at some point we reach a breaking point.
Well, I
I'm
think
kinda
first and
wondering where that
foremost, it's people in the room with the students. It's how do we maintain a class size ratio that best supports all of our learners, from students who have more significant needs to typical peers, or students that are performing above grade level expectation, which actually many of our students are. But it's those people on the ground is I think the most important part. The second part of that is the training that we provide our people. We invest a lot in professional development. During COVID, when we got a lot of money from the federal government, our motto was bounce forward. We didn't want to bounce back, and we didn't want to just provide tutoring for a handful of kids and watch the money run out. So what we did, we invested in the professional development of our faculty, hardcore. We gave a lot of PD with all that money, and you've seen our performance improve over that time. So for us, it's really the people in the classrooms that are supporting and teaching our kids, and then that layer of administration that's providing all of the professional development. We have very little professional development that's contracted by outside providers. It's really our people that provide it.
Okay. And then just one last question too. There was mention earlier of a number of line items that one of the Board of Ed members brought up. I assume that was part of the deliberations you guys
Yes.
had? Okay.
Yep,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Guess I just have a few. You said that you've had to cut 3 teachers, 10 paraeducators, 3 secretaries, a library clerk, a nurse. Can you, are those already identified in terms of the schools where those would be coming from?
Yeah, yeah, they have.
Can you
I-
brief us a little
with-
on some of that?
The exception to that being the secretarial that we're still working through. We removed the nurse as part of the Darcy consolidation. We took one nurse out of the equation there. The 3 teachers were chemistry, math, and Spanish, elementary Spanish. The 10 paraeducators have come K-12 or 12-plus transition across the district. We've made reductions there. The transportation scheduler, obviously out of our transportation department. And again, like I said, we have the 3 clerical positions that we're reducing that haven't been fully finalized at this time. The library media clerk was from Darcy as well last year.
And I know that you can't tell us exactly, but our town manager has recommended an additional 300,000 reduction. Any idea, given past deliberations, where that might have to come from if town council were to go with that 300,000
Well,
reduction?
as I said, our priority has been on maintaining the classroom experience to the greatest extent possible. Operationally, I think we're as lean as we can be in terms of things like snow removal or internet costs, technology. We've moved money around this year to try and purchase Chromebooks for next year that we would have purchased. So that's why I'm not in a position, I don't think, this year to say we can roll over $250,000 like we did last year. So it would have to be things that are not core classroom experiences, hopefully, you know. And so I think, you know, when I said middle school sports, I mean, that's about an $85,000 savings there. We'd probably be looking at something like freshman athletics. Middle school freshmen have opportunities for athletics in the community. This is nothing that I'm suggesting that we want to do, but when you're asking me, like, what would be things I'd be thinking of, and unfortunately, we're even at a place where I'd have to think about electives at Cheshire High School and reducing those. You know, there really aren't electives really to speak of in lower grades, and the electives that we do have, like the, you know, music and art and things, those folks teach our students to comply with the contract to provide prep time for classroom teachers as well. So, you know, I really couldn't cut them, even if I wanted to, which obviously I don't. So I'd have to be looking really predominantly at high school area electives. And I hate even speculating because, you know, the words that come out of my mouth have a lot of meaning for the 400 teachers who work for us and the several hundred non-certified people. So tomorrow morning, people are going to wake up anxious about, you know, where we are. And, you know, there's nothing I can say to console them until, you know, until we know, right? Until the end of April. And, you know, I'd hate to see good people leave because they're anxious. And, you know, some of the people that we've last in, I mean, that's the way the unions work, you know, last in, first out, regardless of how talented you are or if you went to Cheshire High or not, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So, and it's going to be thorny for the next 6 weeks till we get through this.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I do want to thank you, and our town manager, and I know our town leaders. I know Mayor Talbot and Councilperson Jinks will be meeting with legislators next week to talk about that education cost sharing grant. And revenue is a discussion that we need to have that we haven't had. We talk a lot about cutting every year, but I think revenue is something. The state clearly has not kept up with that cost-sharing grant, and that's something that we need to collectively address, working with CCM, and I know there are, this is something all school districts, all communities can come together around, that we need more support for our education. The progressive tax system in the state is over-reliant on right now on our property taxes, right? And that's a regressive tax, and that hurts those, as we've heard already tonight, most in need in our community. And we need the state to step in and assist us in that. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, are there any further comments from counselors? So then I will open up the podium. I will thank you for your presentation, and I will open up the podium for a public comment if there are individuals in the audience who wish to speak. Again, just come up to the podium, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Ms. Ecke, the only comment that I will make is I will ask you to keep your comments related to the education budget that has just been presented.
Very related.
Thank you.
First of all, it's also related to business. And, okay, from what I know is on February 10th, the zoning commission allowed the Norton Farm to be subdivided into 25 lots. Now, if you have 2 children per each lot, instead of doing something like buying a town farm where the kids could run it and learn how to do business and learn how to do, just run a business in general, the kids could have learned that very well. And how many pupils are going to shove into the schools if you keep selling lots and putting the taxes on people? And when are my questions going to be answered, Mr. Talbot?
Your specific question, and if you
I'm
want to,
gonna email
you
them
said you
all
were
to
going to
you.
email me. If you would put together a list of your questions,
I have
I
them.
will do my best to answer as many as possible.
I
through-
have them all in questions. The first email questioned the money that was going out to the town administration. That's number 1. Number 2, all the questions that I had given Noel yesterday. I want to know exactly how many people, how many lost jobs. You know, that's all you should figure that in. And is this town just gonna be a bunch of buildings with kids in them that is gonna up the school budget? And you can't rely on all the sales figures, because they might not sell, and they might not sell at that price that you want. So I'm wondering, when are you gonna answer my questions?
If you want to, what I've just said is I can go back and try to look for an email from December, but
I'll send you the same email. I was gonna send it to you yesterday, but I didn't have time.
okay. If you would
And
do
I'll-
that, I will try to be, again,
And then I'll
with the
scan-
understanding, let me be very clear, that we are entering 6 weeks of budget deliberations, which is the most important job that this council does as elected officials. So it may not be immediate that the response comes to you, but I will respond to you.
Maybe Noel can give you a copy of my handwritten paperwork from yesterday.
That would be fine too.
You know, that's some of the questions I had. And because the educational budget, they're gonna absorb more and more kids. How many more do you want in this town? I think that's awful. And why are we spending so much on things that, shouldn't happen? You should have put the kids to work at a farm, and then you wouldn't be losing. You wouldn't be losing a bunch of, just to a development. I mean, that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Because I think farms are much better.
Thank you, Ms. Acker.
You're welcome.
Any other members of the public wish to speak? Well, thank you again for being here, for listening, and I turn the meeting back over to Mayor Talbot.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson. And seeing nothing else, I will call for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Thank you, Mr. Jings, for the second. All those in favor? Motion passes unanimously by those present. Good evening, and we'll hope to see you at future budget meetings. Thank you.